Hey everybody, this is Chris Sussman, otherwise known as the Barbecue Buddha, and this week we're talking about ribs, baby back ribs. So, if you don't know about baby back ribs, let me just give you a little bit of rib exploration, all right? So, the pig is an animal, and animals have ribs. So, if you look at the pig, and yes, I'm using myself as a pig right here, and you take a cross section, you've got the loin meat, you know, the pork loin, that delicious stuff you cook up there and make pork chops with. You've got the baby back ribs, or otherwise called pork loin ribs, because they're shorter, meatier, and fatter because they're up near that pork loin. And then you've got your spare ribs that are down in the belly. We are cooking pork loin ribs today, or baby back ribs. And this is such an easy recipe. This is a great thing for backyard barbecue, and it normally takes a little bit less time than the spare ribs counterpart. We're gonna do a super simple cook today. We're just gonna clean these ribs up, we're gonna prep them, we're gonna rub them, we're gonna stick them on the big green egg. We're gonna let them smoke for several hours, and at the end, we're gonna glaze them with some barbecue sauce. That's it. We're just going classic barbecue for all of you today. All right, everybody. So, we've got these baby back ribs out of the packaging. You can see they're short fatties, really nice meaty ribs. Not anything really to trim up top. The fat grain in here is perfect, so I'm not gonna do much trimming, but we are going to remove the membrane on the back. So what I do in order to get the membrane off of ribs is I take a butter knife and I place it about the third bone in, and I just slip my knife, if you could see right there. I just slip my knife as far in as I can without breaking the membrane. And then I just pull up slowly using the bone as a fulcrum, as a pressure point. Now that I've got that membrane pulled away from the bones like that, if you see that right there, to get a better grip, I just get a paper towel, I grab it at one end, I get all the way under there, and look at that. One shot. I pulled off the membrane in one shot. Now, there's a lot of debate about this membrane. All of the reading I've done and some of the great pit masters like Aaron Franklin don't pull off the membrane. They say the membrane isn't thick enough to let smoke flavor penetrate through here, and you really, because it's the bone side, you don't need to worry about the rub. When I'm just cooking for myself or family, I always pull off the membrane, but really I've done it both ways, and it works out really well. So if you don't have success pulling off the membrane, or you don't like to pull off the membrane, don't. The ribs will be just as good. Now that I've got the membrane pulled off, we're gonna set this to the side. We're gonna do the rest of the racks of ribs. We've got 3 racks that we're gonna cook today, and then we're going to slather and season them. And just like that, we have the ribs trimmed up. I didn't do much trimming. In fact, you saw me, I didn't do any trimming, but we pulled the membrane off and we have these ready to go. So I'm gonna take off one of my gloves, and we're just gonna use a little bit of French's yellow mustard. Remember, for a slather, you just want a little bit. This is just a binder to hold the rub in place on your ribs. So I'm just gonna do a little squirt there, and rub, get all the surface area covered, and then the bone side. Again, just a tiny bit of a squirt, all right? And for this cook, I'm using an old classic from Dizzy Pig Seasonings in Manassas, Virginia. I'm using Dizzy Dust, which is one of the original, the OG great pork rubs. If you haven't tried Dizzy Dust, you really should get you some. This is such a good rub. We're gonna go ahead and cover. Look at those ribs, these look good. So I'm gonna do this to the next 2 racks. All right, I've got my baby backs all rubbed up. We're gonna fire up the egg and get this thing going. Stay tuned. All right, so the big green egg is almost up to temperature. I strive for close to 200, and the blog post will say 200, but if you're between 200 and 225, that's the target temperature, and let me explain to you why. The barbecue zone is between 225 and 275 degrees Fahrenheit, as most of you know. And depending on where you are in that spectrum is the cut of meat that you choose to use. So larger cuts of meat that have a lot of marbling and fat in it, like a pork shoulder, the Boston butt, you can go higher, like 275, because the fat will give you lots of protection from that large cut over that amount of time. But a smaller cut of meat, like ribs, even though they have a lot of fat content in them, there's not a lot of meat compared to a larger cut of meat. So on a cook like this for a barbecue, you want to start as low as you can. So I strive to be about 200 degrees, maybe a little higher, 225. As the cook progresses, and when I sauce these later in the cook, I'll bump that temperature up a little bit to help set the sauce and get a nice bark. But for ribs, and particularly baby back ribs, you want to keep it low and slow. 200 to 225 degrees, that's your target temp. Get these on. Let's go out and take a look at the big green egg and see where we are. All right, everybody, we're reading a little high on the dome temp at about 250, but that's still okay. I've got my Egg Genius cranking away, and that's telling me we're at 225. So I feel pretty good that we've got the right barbecue zone to put these ribs in. Let's go grab the ribs, throw these babies on. The baby back ribs are on the big green egg, and I'm gonna let them sit there in that smoke bath for the next hour undisturbed. After that, every 30, 45 minutes, depending on how the ribs are looking, I'm gonna spritz it with this mix of 50-50 apple cider vinegar and apple juice, and then I put a couple of dashes of Worcestershire and hot sauce. That's my secret spritz. Now it's your secret too. But to be direct, the reason why you spritz ribs, barbecue, anything that's in a low and slow bath is not for the flavor. You can layer a little bit of flavor on, but the flavor compounds compared to the moisture inside the spritz or the mop is so insignificant, you're not layering in much flavor. So why do you do it? Why do I do it? Well, here's why. It's the smoke adhesion. Smoke is actually not the white stuff that you see coming off the burning wood. Smoke is the gases that get released while the wood is burning. Once your fire is hot enough, not the temperature of the grill, but the combustion of the wood burning, you're gonna release those gases. And those gases need something to adhere to. Moisture ensures that those gases adhere to the surface of the barbecue and get absorbed in. That's how you get the flavor. So you know when people see a smoke ring is the symptom, not the cause. A smoke ring shows that you have the proper amount of moisture on the surface area of your barbecue to absorb all of those gases. But the smoke ring in and of itself is not flavorful. It's just the myoglobin reacting with the gases and the moisture as it gets absorbed. So why do you spritz? Why do you mop? Why do you use this stuff? You use it in order to get the smoke flavor, which is what we're really all about with barbecue, into your ribs. So let's take a break for a little bit. We'll come back on the first hour. I'll show you how I spritz my ribs. We'll watch how the bark is forming, and we will bring this cook home. Thanks, everybody. All right, everybody, it's been 5.5 hours or so. Ribs are just about done. Look at the bark, the color's beautiful. Let's pick up a rack and give it the bend test. You can see right there, the ribs bend over without breaking. They're looking really good. This rack is looking good. Look at that color. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna take some of this Big Green Egg Kansas City Sweet Barbecue sauce. You can use any barbecue sauce. I'll link one of my recipes in this video. And you just wanna pour some right over top. All right, everybody, so that cook went a little bit longer, about 5.5 hours, and maybe about 10 minutes over when I glazed the ribs. A lot of people ask me why I don't, or if I do, wrap my ribs. Sometimes I wrap the ribs. Personally, I like my ribs with a little tug to it. I don't like them that mushy. Remember, the Texas wrap, especially with aluminum foil, puts all that steam from the cooking meat back into that environment, helping speed up or hasten your ability to get to a tender environment. I think if you just cook it low and slow long enough, look at that. That rack looks mighty good. And look at that glaze. This is looking delicious. So let's give this a slice. The ribs came out perfect. Got a little bit of a pull to it, a little bit of a bite. Super tender. I see the smoke ring. Got some good smoke flavor in there. Let me hold one of these ribs up for you. Look at that. You see the nice pink ring on the outside. Juicy, all that juicy coming down. Let's go ahead and get a bite of one of these and see how it tastes. All right, so we did it, gang. We cooked another cook together this week. So much fun. We did ribs, baby back ribs. We smoked them low and slow for about 5.5 hours on the Big Green Egg. And they have come out awesome. Nice smoke ring, beautiful glaze, juicy. They're perfect. Nice little kiss of smoke. I used a couple of chunks of hickory and a couple of chunks of applewood. Perfect wood combination and flavor. This is a super easy cook. You just need patience and to use your 5 senses. So stay tuned for another edition of the Barbecue Buddha's cooking show or channel or whatever. If you like what you saw today, leave a comment down below. And if you want to see more, hit the subscribe button right here. And until we eat again, cook something great for me. Thanks, everybody.